Alien King disowns daughter, and a human made him regret his choice. Captain Lee Andrews pressed his back against the cold metal wall of the Krasari Palace's lower levels, his tactical display showing energy readings that made no sense. The diplomatic quarter shouldn't have had any high-energy signatures, let alone ones that pulsed with this particular pattern. He'd seen something similar only once before, in a prisoner containment field. "Control, I'm tracking an anomalous signal," he whispered into his comm. "Going to investigate." "Negative, Captain. Stay on assigned patrol route." Lee's fingers tightened on his rifle. After 3 months of providing security for the human diplomatic mission, he'd learned to trust his instincts. Something was wrong here, and his position as head of security gave him the authority to check it out, whether Control liked it or not. "Maintaining sector oversight," he replied vaguely, already moving toward the source of the reading. The corridor grew darker as he descended, the ornate decorations of the upper palace giving way to utilitarian metal and shadow. His boots, designed for stealth, made no sound on the polished floor. The energy signature grew stronger, pulsing like a heartbeat on his display. A soft sound stopped him, singing, barely above a whisper, in a language his translator couldn't parse. The voice was hauntingly beautiful, filled with a sadness that made his chest tight. Lee rounded the corner and froze. A containment field hummed in the center of a circular chamber, its purple energy casting eerie shadows. But it was the figure inside that held his attention. She sat with her back to him, sunset orange fur catching the light. Fox-like ears drooped with exhaustion, and a tail of the same brilliant color curled around her legs. Her simple white shift was dirty and torn, but she held herself with unmistakable dignity. The singing stopped. Her ears twitched, and she turned. Lee found himself staring into eyes that combined human intelligence with something alien and mesmerizing. Her face was beautifully human in its structure, framed by flowing dark hair that contrasted with her fur. Despite her obvious imprisonment, there was no fear in her expression, only careful assessment. "Well," she said in perfect standard English, her voice carrying the same musical quality as her song, "you're certainly not one of my father's guards." Lee lowered his rifle slightly but maintained his defensive stance. "Captain Lee Andrews, Earth Diplomatic Security Force. Who are you and why are you being held here?" A bitter smile crossed her face. "I am, or was, Princess Nari of the Krasari. As for why I'm here," she gestured at her surroundings with an elegant hand. "My father believes a daughter who questions his methods is more dangerous than one who simply obeys." Lee's mind raced. There had been no mention of a princess in any of their diplomatic briefings. The Emperor spoke often of his sons, but a daughter? The implications were staggering. The sound of boots on metal echoed from the corridor, the patrol he'd avoided earlier. Nari's ears flattened against her head. "You should go," she said softly. "Being found here would cause an interplanetary incident." Lee's jaw tightened. The diplomatic part of his brain screamed at him to leave, to report this through proper channels. But the look in Nari's eyes, that combination of resignation and defiance, made the decision for him. "How long have you been down here?" 3 years, 2 months, and 17 days. She tilted her head. "Why?" Lee slung his rifle and reached for his sensor kit. "Because I'm thinking that's about long enough." Nari stood in one fluid motion, her tail swishing with sudden tension. "You can't disable it. The field requires royal authorization." "Good thing I don't play by royal rules, then." Lee's fingers flew over his sensor pad, probing the field's frequencies. "I've got about 2 minutes before that patrol reaches us. Want to help me cause an interplanetary incident?" For a moment, Nari stood silent. Then a slow smile spread across her face, transforming it from merely beautiful to radiant. "You know, Captain Andrews, I think I do." Lee's fingers danced across his sensor pad, probing the containment field's frequencies. The approaching footsteps grew louder, each echo marking the seconds until discovery. "The field harmonics are royal-coded," Nari said, her tail twitching with nervous energy. "Even if you break through, the disruption will trigger." Lee grinned. "The emergency protocols, yeah, but they're expecting someone to break in," his sensor pad chirped. "Not out." The field flickered as he reversed the containment frequency. Nari's eyes widened, her ears perking forward with sudden understanding. "You're using the security system against itself." 3 years in here, Bet they got sloppy with maintenance. Lee glanced at his tactical display. When I drop this field, we'll have exactly 12 seconds before the system resets. Nari moved to the edge of the barrier, her movements liquid grace despite her ragged clothing. The nearest security checkpoint? 30 meters, first junction. There's a maintenance shaft behind the third panel. Her voice dropped lower. The guards don't know about it. Lee raised an eyebrow. And you do? I wasn't always a prisoner. Something dangerous flashed in her eyes. Ready? The footsteps were almost upon them. Lee took a deep breath and triggered the reversal sequence. The purple field collapsed with a sound like shattering glass. Nari burst into motion, crossing the chamber in 2 elegant bounds. Lee covered their rear as she led them to the wall panel, her fingers finding hidden catches with practiced ease. The panel slid aside, revealing a narrow shaft. Movement in Sector 7, a voice echoed from the corridor. Containment breach! Lee fired 2 suppression rounds toward the junction, the non-lethal charges filling the air with crackling energy. Ladies first. Nari was already climbing, her tail brushing his face as he followed her into the shaft. The panel slid shut behind them just as boots thundered into the chamber. Up 3 levels, Nari whispered. The shaft connects to the old servants' corridors. They climbed in silence, the sounds of alarm klaxons muffled by layers of metal. Lee found himself admiring the efficiency of Nari's movements. No wasted energy, no hesitation. This was not someone broken by captivity. At the 3rd level, Nari paused. Her ears swiveled, catching sounds Lee couldn't hear. 2 guards in the corridor. They're not moving. Posted or patrolling. Posted, near the junction. She glanced down at him, moonlight from an overhead grate catching her features. The next access point is 10 meters past them. Lee reached for a distraction charge, but Nari's hand caught his wrist. Her touch was surprisingly warm through his tactical glove. Allow me. There was a predatory grace to her smile. I've waited 3 years to test my father's guards. Before Lee could object, she pressed a different panel. It swung open silently, and she slipped into the corridor. Lee cursed under his breath and moved to follow. He needn't have worried. By the time he emerged, both guards lay unconscious, their weapons already in Nari's hands. She checked the charges with practiced efficiency. Not bad for a princess, Lee said, securing the guards' comm units. My combat instructor believed princesses should be able to defend themselves. Nari's ears flattened. It's one of the reasons my father had her exiled. The bitterness in her voice spoke volumes. Lee filed the information away for later as they moved through the shadowed corridor. They had bigger problems right now. We need to get you off Palace before they lock down the diplomatic quarter. He checked his tactical display. I have a safe house in the merchant district. Nari shook her head. They'll search there first. I know somewhere better. She hesitated. But you'll have to trust me. A distant explosion rocked the corridor, the security forces getting serious about their search. Lee thought of regulations, of protocols, of the proper channels for handling political refugees. Lead the way. Nari's answering smile made his pulse jump in a way that had nothing to do with their situation. She moved ahead, her sunset-colored tail swaying like a banner of defiance against the darkness. As they raced through the shadowed corridors of the palace, Lee realized he'd just committed himself to something far bigger than a simple rescue. The way Nari moved, the way she thought, this was someone who'd used her imprisonment to plan. And somehow he knew he was going to help her see those plans through. The maintenance tunnels beneath the merchant district hummed with ancient machinery. Lee followed Nari through the labyrinth, noting how she navigated the darkness with perfect confidence. Her night vision was clearly superior to his tactical overlay. The merchants built these tunnels centuries ago, she explained, her voice barely above a whisper. When my father consolidated power, he sealed them off. But he never truly understood what he had hidden away. They emerged into a vast chamber that took Lee's breath away. Abandoned market stalls created shadowed canyons beneath a dome of tarnished metal. Shafts of light filtered through tiny holes in the ceiling, creating a false starfield above them. The old summer market, Nari said, pride evident in her voice. My people used to gather here from across the galaxy, before my father decided outside influences made us weak. Lee scanned the chamber with professional attention. Multiple exits, good sight lines, hard to surround. You've thought this through. I had time. Nari's tail brushed against his leg as she passed, leading him toward a section of wall that looked no different from any other. And motivation. The hidden door opened to reveal a small but well-appointed room. Books lined one wall, actual physical books, their spines marked with symbols Lee's translator couldn't parse. A weapons rack held traditional Krasari blades alongside more modern equipment. "Someone's been helping you," Lee said. It wasn't a question. Nari began checking the room's security systems. "Not everyone agrees with my father's vision of isolation and conquest. Some of us remember when the Krasari were known for more than military might." She turned to face him, and Lee saw the weight of responsibility in her bearing. This wasn't just about escape. She'd been building a resistance. "Why were you really imprisoned?" Nari's ears flattened briefly before she forced them to relax. "I discovered my father's plans for expansion into human space. He means to use the diplomatic mission as cover for gathering intelligence, finding weaknesses." Her hands clenched. "When I confronted him, tried to show him the madness of starting a war, he locked you away rather than listen." "Worse." Nari's eyes met his, fierce and determined. "He's going to use my escape as justification to claim Earth orchestrated an attack on the royal family, the perfect excuse for war." Lee's tactical mind raced through the implications. The diplomatic quarter's security protocols. They're not to keep threats out. They're to control what information gets back to Earth. Nari moved to a console, bringing up displays of palace security patterns. "My father has spent years preparing for this. The trade agreements, the cultural exchange programs, all of it carefully crafted to put human forces exactly where he wants them when the trap springs." Lee watched her work, admiring the speed and precision of her movements. "You're not just trying to expose this, are you? You're going to stop it." "I'm going to save both our peoples from my father's ambition." She looked up at him, uncertainty flickering across her features for the first time. "I understand if you need to report this through official channels, your career, your duty. My duty is to protect people." Lee moved closer, his voice soft but intense. "And right now you're the only one trying to do that." The moment stretched between them, charged with something neither was ready to name. Nari's tail swayed gently, her ears forward with alert interest. A proximity alarm shattered the silence. Nari's hands flew across the console. "Palace guards," she said, tension evident in her voice. "They're sweeping the merchant district with life sign scanners. These shields won't fool them for long." Lee checked his weapons. "How many?" "3 squads, moving in standard search pattern." A smile touched her lips. "But they're using old protocols, the ones I helped design. You know their blind spots." "Better." Her eyes gleamed with predatory satisfaction. "I know how to turn their own tactics against them. That is, if you're willing to try something rather unorthodox." Lee thought of regulations, of proper procedure, of the diplomatic nightmare unfolding above them. Then he looked at Nari, brilliant, unbroken, offering him a chance to prevent a war. "I think we're well past orthodox, Princess." Her smile widened. "In that case, Captain Andrews, let me show you how the Krasari used to fight before my father outlawed our more creative traditions." Through his tactical display, Lee watched the palace guards move through the merchant district streets above. Their search pattern was precise, professional, and completely blind to what waited beneath their feet. "Ready?" Nari's whisper carried easily to his enhanced hearing. She crouched in the shadows beside him, her sunset-colored tail absolutely still with concentration. "Born ready," Lee adjusted his rifle's settings, "though I still think this plan is crazy." "The best plans usually are." Her smile flashed in the darkness. "My combat instructor always said predictability was a warrior's worst enemy." "Your instructor sounds like my kind of crazy." "Lady Kira would have liked you." Something wistful crossed Nari's features. "She taught me to think beyond traditional forms, to find advantage in unexpected places." "Is that why she was exiled?" "That, and she caught my father's assassins trying to eliminate a trade delegation." Nari's ears flattened. He claimed she was lying, that she had orchestrated the attempt herself to discredit him. "I tried to defend her, and that's when he decided you were too dangerous to leave free." A series of quick hand signals from Nari cut off further conversation. Above them, the guards had reached their first target. Lee triggered the remote sensor he'd planted earlier. On the street, warning signals flared as the guards' equipment detected what appeared to be a high-level security breach in exactly the wrong direction. Containment breach in Sector 4, the guard captain's voice crackled over their stolen comm unit. All units converge. As the guards rushed toward the false signal, Lee and Nari emerged from a different maintenance hatch. They moved in perfect synchronization, covering each other's blind spots as they slipped through the suddenly empty streets. "The captain's comm unit," Nari said as they reached their next position. "Let me see it." Lee handed it over, watching as her fingers danced across its security controls, her face lit with fierce concentration, ears forward and alert. "What my father never understood," she said, not looking up from her work, "is that true strength comes from adaptation, from learning, growing, changing." The comm unit chirped as she bypassed its security, from being willing to see beyond tradition. Speaking from experience, her eyes met his, something vulnerable beneath the determination. 3 years in that cell taught me more than a lifetime in the palace ever did, about myself, about what really matters. The moment stretched between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. Then the comm unit crackled to life, and Nari's smile turned predatory. Time to show them what else I learned in isolation. She activated the command channel. "Security breach in Sector 7, unknown hostiles. Fall back and regroup." Lee watched in admiration as she wove false commands into the guard channel, her voice a perfect mimicry of different officers. Within minutes, the search pattern had completely broken down as confused units responded to phantom threats. "They'll figure it out soon," she said, ears swiveling to track distant shouts of confusion. "They don't need to stay confused long." Lee checked his tactical display. "We're 3 minutes from the primary target." "The diplomatic archives," Nari's tail swished with anticipation, "where my father keeps proof of all his careful plotting." They moved through the shadows of merchant stalls, their earlier teamwork even smoother now. Lee found himself hyperly aware of her presence, the grace of her movement, the subtle signals of her ears and tail, the way she anticipated his actions before he made them. They were halfway to the archives when Nari suddenly froze. Her ears lay flat against her head, and her tail puffed with alarm. "Lee," she whispered, "something's wrong. The guard patterns, they're too easy to manipulate, almost like..." A new voice cut across the guard channel, deep and commanding. "Execute Protocol 7. Nari's eyes went wide with horror. Brilliant light flooded the street as hidden panels opened in the buildings above them. Armed figures in distinctive silver-marked armor dropped from the revealed platforms, surrounding them in a perfect circular formation. At their head stood a towering Krasari male with battle-scarred orange fur and ceremonial armor. His smile was coldly triumphant as he looked at Nari. "My dear daughter," Emperor Varric said, his voice dripping with false concern. "Did you really think I wouldn't be prepared for your little rebellion?" His gaze shifted to Lee. "Though I must admit, your choice of accomplice is interesting." Lee moved to stand between Nari and her father, his rifle raised. "Sir, as a representative of Earth's diplomatic security force..." "You are a spy and a kidnapper," Varric cut him off, "who has just provided me with exactly the justification I need." His smile widened. "The human diplomatic mission plotting with terrorists to kidnap my beloved daughter, when this reaches the Krasari people." "Father, don't..." "The time for words is past, Nari." Varric raised his hand. "Take them and make sure our human friend's injuries are convincing." Lee's combat training kicked in before the Emperor finished speaking. He fired 3 rapid shots at the overhead lights, plunging the street into sudden darkness. In the same motion, he grabbed Nari's arm and pulled her toward the nearest cover. The elite guard's return fire crackled through the space they'd just occupied. Lee's tactical display filled with threat indicators as more soldiers emerged from hidden positions. "Your father's been practicing psychological warfare," he said, noting how the guards were herding them toward a specific point. "This whole setup was designed to demoralize you." "No," Nari's voice was tight with barely controlled emotion. "This was designed to prove a point, that I'm weak, that I need to be controlled." Her ears lay flat against her head, "that humans are as treacherous as he claims." A massive explosion rocked the street behind them. Lee glanced at his tactical display and cursed. They're cutting off our retreat routes. Good. Something dangerous flickered in Nari's eyes. Because we're not retreating. Before Lee could respond, she vaulted over their cover and charged directly at the nearest group of guards. Her movements were pure predator, fluid, precise, and absolutely lethal. The first guard went down before he could raise his weapon, the second spun into the third, and suddenly she had a clear path through their line. Lee provided covering fire, his admiration warring with professional assessment. She fought like someone who had spent years practicing forms in her mind, waiting for the chance to make them real. "The secondary entrance," she called back to him. "The one I showed you on the plans." Lee's memory flashed to the archive schematics she'd displayed earlier. The secondary entrance that led straight to... "That's suicide," he shouted, even as he moved to follow her. "The security systems..." "Trust me," and damn him, he did. He followed her lightning-fast advance, their movements synchronizing naturally as they fought their way through the Emperor's elite guard. Her close combat skills complemented his ranged expertise perfectly, as if they'd trained together for years instead of hours. They reached the secondary entrance just as Emperor Varric's voice boomed across the plaza. "Enough of this foolishness, Nari. You're only proving why you needed to be contained." Nari's hands flew across the door's control panel while Lee covered their position. Guards were moving to surround them again, but their formation was cautious now, wary of the damage they'd already sustained. "You never understood, Father," Nari called back, her voice carrying clearly across the plaza. "What you saw as weakness was actually strength you were too afraid to recognize." The door slid open with a soft hiss. Inside, Lee could see the archive's security systems glowing with deadly promise. "Last chance, daughter." Varric's voice held no warmth now. "Surrender, and perhaps I'll let your human pet live." Nari's tail bristled at the threat. She turned to Lee, something fierce and wonderful burning in her eyes. "Do you trust me?" "Completely." The word escaped before he could think about it, but he knew it was true. She grabbed his tactical vest and pulled him close. For one heart-stopping moment, he thought she was going to kiss him. Instead, she whispered in his ear, "When I move, be ready to fire at anything that glows red." Then she did kiss him, quick and fierce and full of promise, before spinning away to face the guards. "You know what your real mistake was, Father?" Her voice rang with authority that made even the elite guards hesitate. "You taught me that power flows from absolute control." Her hands moved in a complex pattern that Lee's combat systems couldn't track. The archive door's security panel erupted in sparks. "But Lady Kira taught me that true power..." Warning klaxons blared as the archive security systems went into total meltdown. Red emergency lights flared throughout the corridor, flows from knowing exactly what to let go. Lee opened fire on the red lights as Nari dropped and rolled. The combination of their attacks triggered a cascading system failure that sent waves of electromagnetic chaos through the entire security grid. In the chaos that followed, as guards stumbled blind and emergency systems screamed, Nari's voice found him with perfect clarity. "Run!" The old transit tunnels echoed with distant alarms as Lee and Nari finally slowed their headlong flight. They'd switched paths multiple times, using maintenance shafts and blocked corridors that weren't on any official maps. Now, in a forgotten maintenance bay deep beneath the commercial district, they finally had a moment to catch their breath. "That," Lee said, checking his tactical display for pursuit, "was either brilliant or insane. Lady Kira always said the best strategies are both." Nari's ears swiveled, tracking sounds too faint for human hearing. "The security overload will keep the archives locked down for hours. My father can't risk losing those records. They're his only proof of certain arrangements." "Speaking of arrangements," Lee turned to face her. "That kiss?" Nari's tail swished once, betraying nervous energy despite her composed expression. "Was that inappropriate? I've read about human customs, but in moments of heightened combat." The timing was perfect. Lee stepped closer, watching how her ears perked forward with interest. The execution could use some practice, though. A smile played at the corners of her mouth. "Are you offering to help me improve my technique, Captain? I believe in thorough training." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. "And you did save our lives back there." This time when they kissed, there was no rush of combat, no guards in pursuit, just the growing warmth between them, as Nari's hands slid up his chest and Lee's fingers tangled gently in her hair, careful of her sensitive ears. When they finally parted, Nari's tail had curved around Lee's leg possessively. "I think," she said softly, "I'm beginning to understand why my father fears human influences so much. Because we're unpredictable. Because you make me want things I was taught not to want." Her eyes held his. Freedom, choice, a future not bound by tradition. The moment stretched between them, heavy with possibility. Then a distant explosion shook dust from the ceiling, reminding them of the crisis at hand. "We need to move." Nari reluctantly stepped back. "My father will have sealed the diplomatic quarter by now. Your people are in danger." Lee checked his weapons. "The ambassador's fail-safe protocols should have activated when I missed check-in. They'll be on alert." Alert won't be enough. Nari moved to a hidden panel, revealing another set of tunnels. "Not against what's coming. My father has sleeper agents throughout the human quarter. The moment he gives the signal—" "How many?" "Enough to ensure maximum casualties when he springs his trap." Her ears flattened. "He plans to blame radical separatists, claim that humans died trying to protect Krasari citizens. The perfect excuse for military intervention." Lee's tactical mind raced through scenarios. "We need proof, something concrete enough to convince both sides." "We need more than proof." Nari's voice hardened. "We need allies. There are others who oppose my father's plans, but they're scattered, afraid. They need a symbol, something to rally behind." A lost princess returning to save her people. A princess who learned that true strength comes from cooperation, not conquest. She held out her hand. "Will you help me show them?" Lee took her hand, feeling the strength in her grip. "One condition." "Name it. Next time we kiss, let's try to do it without anyone shooting at us." Nari's laugh was bright in the darkness. "I make no promises, Captain, but we can certainly try." They moved deeper into the tunnels, following paths that had been old when Nari's grandfather was young. Above them, the city blazed with alerts and searchlights as Emperor Varric's forces hunted for his wayward daughter and her human accomplice. But in the darkness beneath the streets, something new was taking shape. A partnership that crossed species and cultures. A revolution built on understanding instead of force. And maybe if they survived what was coming, something more. The abandoned temple rose like a ghost through the pre-dawn mist. Its spires, once gleaming with ceremonial lights, now stood dark against the purple sky. Lee followed Nari through a side entrance, noting how the dust on the floor had already been disturbed by recent footprints. "Your father's forces don't patrol here?" he asked, scanning the shadows with his tactical display. "The old temples are considered cursed." Nari's tail brushed against his leg as she passed. "After the purges, most people decided it was safer to forget they existed. When my father first took power, he eliminated all religious authority that might challenge him." Her ears flattened. "The temples were sealed, their records destroyed, another piece of our heritage lost to his fear of change." They emerged into a vast circular chamber. Moonlight filtered through broken windows, casting strange patterns on walls covered in ancient script. But it was the group gathered in the center that drew Lee's attention. A dozen Krasari turned to face them, led by a striking figure with pure white fur that seemed to glow in the dim light. Lady Kira's eyes, sharp as blades, fixed on Nari. "My student," she said softly, "you've grown." Nari's composure cracked. She rushed forward to embrace her former mentor, her tail swishing with emotion. "I thought you were dead." "Your father's assassins tried their best." Kira's smile was fierce. "They learned that some traditions are worth preserving." Her gaze shifted to Lee. "Though I see you found new traditions to explore." Lee met her assessment steadily. "Captain Lee Andrews, Earth Diplomatic Security. He helped me escape," Nari said, "and he's willing to help us stop my father's plans." "A human?" One of the other Krasari stepped forward, his dark gray fur marked with veteran scars. "This is too dangerous. If he betrays us—" "He won't." Nari moved to stand beside Lee, her shoulder brushing his. "He's proven himself more loyal to Krasari ideals than many of our own people." "And what ideals are those?" Lady Kira's voice carried unexpected weight. "What did you learn in your imprisonment, my student?" Nari straightened, and Lee saw the princess transform into something more, a leader. I learned that strength without compassion becomes tyranny. That tradition without growth becomes chains. Her tail twined with Lee's hand. That what my father calls weakness is actually the courage to change. Murmurs rose from the gathered Krasari. Lee watched their body language, noting how their ears and tails responded to Nari's words. There was hope here, and fear, and something else, hunger for change. Pretty words, the scarred veteran growled, but words won't stop your father's agents from slaughtering humans. No, Lee said, but this might. He produced a data crystal, complete records of the Emperor's secret communications, including his plans for false flag attacks, downloaded during that security override you helped trigger. Nari's eyes widened. When did you? While you were overloading the security systems, he smiled. I figured if we were going to crash the grid anyway. Lady Kira's laugh was sharp with approval. You've chosen well, my student. She turned to the others. The princess has brought us both proof and opportunity. The question is, are we ready to use them? The diplomatic quarter is sealed, another Krasari said. Even with this evidence, we can't reach the human authorities in time. We don't need to reach the authorities. Nari's eyes gleamed. We need to reach the people, both our peoples. She turned to Lee. The communication hub in the merchant's quarter, it still has override access to the public networks? If you're thinking what I think you're thinking, Lee checked his tactical display. We'd have maybe 3 minutes before security forces responded. 3 minutes is enough to broadcast the truth. She addressed the group. My father believes he can control the narrative, use it to start a war, but he's forgotten something important about both humans and Krasari. And what's that? The veteran demanded. We recognize truth when we see it. She squeezed Lee's hand, and we're stronger together than apart. Lady Kira stepped forward. You understand what you're proposing? If we fail, my father wins. Nari's voice was steel. He'll start a war that will destroy everything both our peoples have built. I've spent 3 years in chains because I dared to speak truth to power. Her tail bristled. I won't spend another day silent. One by one, the gathered Krasari straightened. Lee saw the change ripple through them, the moment when a scattered resistance became an army. Well then, Lady Kira said, producing a worn but well-maintained blade. Let's remind the Emperor why the old ways included learning new tricks. Dawn painted the merchant quarter spires in shades of blood and gold. Lee crouched beside Nari on a rooftop overlooking the communication hub, watching guard patrols through his tactical display. Lady Kira and her resistance fighters had split into teams, ready to create diversions across the district. Your father's doubled the security since our last visit, Lee noted, marking patrol patterns in his tactical system. He's afraid. Nari's ears swiveled, tracking movement below. Not of us, of the truth, of losing control of the narrative he spent years crafting. Speaking of control, Lee touched her arm gently. You know this plan means you can never go back. Once we expose him, I never wanted to go back. She turned to face him, her sunset-colored fur catching the early light. Every day in that cell, I dreamed of moving forward, of finding a different way. Her hand found his. I just never expected that way to include falling in love with a human. Lee's heart skipped. They hadn't said those words yet, though the feeling had been growing between them since that first kiss in the archives. Nari? I know. Her tail curled around his wrist. Terrible timing, but I needed you to know, in case... Lee pulled her close and kissed her, pouring everything he couldn't say into the contact. When they parted, her eyes were bright with emotion. We're going to survive this, he said firmly, both of us, and then we're going to have a very long conversation about timing. A smile tugged at her mouth. Is that an order, Captain? Consider it a tactical imperative. Their comm units crackled with Lady Kira's voice. Teams in position, awaiting your signal. Nari squeezed Lee's hand once more before releasing it. Ready to crash my father's party? Born ready, he checked his weapons. Though I still think this plan is insane. The best ones usually are. She moved to the roof's edge, her movements liquid grace. Remember, when the guards respond to the explosions, we'll have exactly 3 minutes before reinforcements arrive, he joined her, and 2 more before your father's elite guards mobilize. 5 minutes to change the course of 2 civilizations. Her tail swished with nervous energy. No pressure, Lee's tactical display lit up as the first explosion rocked the western quarter. Lady Kira's teams had begun their attack, drawing guards away from the hub. Right on schedule, emergency channels erupted with calls for backup. They moved as one, using maintenance scaffolding to descend to street level. The remaining guards were focused outward, watching for obvious threats. They never saw the princess and the captain coming. Lee's non-lethal rounds dropped 2 guards, while Nari's inherited combat skills dispatched 3 more. They reached the hub's security door just as secondary explosions lit up the skyline. 30 seconds ahead of schedule, Lee said as Nari's fingers flew across the security panel. I'm starting to think Lady Kira planned those distractions a little too well. She always was thorough in her lessons. The door slid open, though I doubt she ever expected me to use them quite like this. They encountered minimal resistance inside. Most of the staff had responded to the emergency calls. The few technicians they found were quickly subdued and secured. Control rooms ahead. Lee checked the countdown in his display. 2 minutes until primary response teams arrive. They rounded the corner and froze. Commander Theron stood before the control room door, his silver-tipped ears catching the emergency lights. Princess. His hand rested on his weapon, but he hadn't drawn it. Your father said you might try something like this. And what else did he say, Commander? Nari's voice was gentle. That I'm confused, corrupted by human influence? Or did he tell you what he plans to do to both our peoples? Theron's ears flattened. He says you've been deceived. He's the deceiver. Nari stepped forward. You know this, Theron. You've served him long enough to see what he's become, what he's turning our people into. The commander's tail twitched with uncertainty. Lee kept his weapon ready, but didn't raise it. This moment belonged to Nari. If I'm wrong, she continued, then arrest us. Take us to my father. Let him explain to everyone why he kept his daughter chained for 3 years. Let him explain the orders in that data crystal, the ones authorizing attacks on his own people. Theron's eyes narrowed. What orders? Help us broadcast the truth. Nari held out her hand. Let our people decide who they want to be. For a long moment, the only sound was the wail of distant alarms. Then Theron stepped aside. I always wondered, he said quietly, why he feared your voice more than your brother's weapons. They rushed past him into the control room. Lee secured the door while Nari began preparing the broadcast systems. 1 minute until primary response, he reported, watching threats converge on his tactical display. Make it count, Princess. Nari's hands moved across the controls with practiced confidence. Oh, I intend to. Her eyes met his, fierce with purpose. Ready to help me rewrite history, Captain? With you? Lee moved to cover her position, his heart full of something that felt a lot like destiny. Always. Nari's voice rang through every communication channel in the capital, her words carrying to both human and Krasari ears. The data crystal's contents played alongside her speech, damning orders, secret communications, plans for manufactured atrocities. My father believes that strength comes from control, she said, her tail straight and proud behind her, that our people can only survive by dominating others. But I've seen a different kind of strength. Lee watched the tactical display as security forces converged on their position. Lady Kira's teams were keeping many occupied, but the Emperor's elite guard was cutting through the chaos with deadly purpose. 30 seconds, he warned. Nari continued, her voice never wavering. I've seen humans and Krasari working together. I've experienced the power of trust, of cooperation, of challenging our assumptions about each other, and I've learned that true strength. The control room door exploded inward. Lee's combat training took over as he fired precise shots through the smoke, covering Nari as she completed the broadcast. Commander Theron's voice carried from the corridor, ordering his men to stand down, but it was drowned out by a deeper, more commanding tone. Enough! Emperor Varric strode through the chaos, his battle-scarred fur bristling with rage. I will not let you destroy everything I've built. You're destroying it yourself, Father. Nari's hands never left the controls, continuing to transmit. With every lie, every manipulation, every refusal to see that the universe is changing. Elite guards filled the room, weapons trained on both Lee and Nari. But they didn't fire, couldn't fire, not while the Emperor's daughter was broadcasting to the entire capital. Change? Varric snarled. Look what their influence has done to you. My daughter, consorting with humans, betraying her own people. The only betrayal, Nari's voice cut like a blade, is denying what we could become out of fear of what we might lose. Her tail brushed Lee's leg as she stepped forward. You taught me that power flows from the throne, but I've learned it flows from the heart. Romantic nonsense. Varric's hand moved to his ceremonial blade. This human has poisoned your mind with their weak ideals. Lee kept his weapon ready but focused. One wrong move could spark an incident neither side could walk back from. Your daughter made her own choices, sir. Maybe it's time to consider why. You dare speak to me? The Emperor's ears lay flat against his head. Guards, take them. The princess will be contained until she can be re-educated. As for the human? Father. Something in Nari's tone made everyone freeze. If you do this, if you continue down this path, you'll start a war our people can't win. We are Krasari, we do not bow to. We are stronger than you know. Nari's voice carried through the room and the broadcast simultaneously. Strong enough to change, to grow, to recognize that diversity brings strength, not weakness. More explosions rocked the district, Lady Kira's forces engaging the reinforcements. But Lee noticed something else. Citizens gathering in the streets below, humans and Krasari alike, watching the broadcast on public screens. Your own people are listening, Lee said quietly. Really listening, maybe for the first time. Varric's eyes darted to the windows, seeing the crowds forming. His tail lashed with barely controlled fury. You think one broadcast, one moment of rebellion can undo generations of tradition? No. Nari moved to stand beside Lee, her shoulder brushing his. But it can start something new. A tradition of cooperation instead of conquest, of trust instead of fear. Her hand found Lee's, of love instead of control. The Emperor's blade cleared its sheath. Then you leave me no choice. If I must sacrifice my own daughter to save our people from weakness. Multiple weapons shifted, creating a web of potential devastation. Lee's tactical display screamed warnings as fingers tightened on triggers, but Nari's voice cut through it all. I am not weak. Her words rang with authority that made even her father pause. I survived 3 years in chains without breaking. I found strength in understanding rather than fear. I discovered love that transcends species. Her tail bristled. And I am done letting you decide what our people can become. Lee saw the moment Varric's control snapped. The Emperor lunged forward, blade aimed at his daughter's heart. What happened next would be debated in both human and Krasari histories for generations to come. The Chains of Birthright, Part 10. Time seemed to slow as Emperor Varric's blade descended toward Nari's heart. Lee moved to intercept, but someone else was faster. Commander Theron's weapon cracked with stunning force, catching the Emperor in his sword arm. In the same instant, Nari executed a perfect counter, one of Lady Kira's forbidden techniques, that sent her father's blade spinning away. Stand down! Theron's voice carried the weight of decades of command. By my authority as commander of the Royal Guard, I am relieving Emperor Varric of his position under Article 7 of the ancient laws. The elite guards hesitated, caught between ingrained loyalty and the truth they'd just witnessed. Their emperor had just attempted to murder his own daughter on a live broadcast to the entire capital. You dare invoke the ancient laws? Varric snarled, cradling his injured arm. I outlawed them years ago. You tried. Lady Kira's voice carried from the doorway as she entered with her resistance fighters. But some traditions survive because they protect us from exactly this kind of tyranny. Nari stood tall, her tail steady behind her. The ancient laws state that any ruler who puts personal power above the welfare of our people can be removed by the combined authority of the Royal Guard and the Temple Guardians. Her eyes met her father's. Did you think I spent those 3 years in chains doing nothing but waiting? Understanding dawned in Varric's eyes. You planned this, all of it. I planned for change. Nari's voice was gentle now, for the chance to show our people a better way forward. She turned to address the guards. You've seen the evidence. You've heard his own words. Will you stand with tradition, or will you stand with progress? One by one, the elite guards lowered their weapons. In the streets below, the crowds had grown larger, humans and Krasari standing together, watching history unfold. This isn't over, Varric growled. The people will never accept. They already have. Lee's tactical display showed feeds from across the city. Look around you. They're choosing a future without fear. Nari stepped forward, her bearing every inch a princess. No, Lee realized, a leader. Father, you taught me that power flows from strength, but you never understood that the strongest chains are the ones we choose to accept. Her tail brushed Lee's hand, and the strongest bonds are the ones we forge freely. Commander Theron moved to secure the former emperor as Lady Kira approached Nari. The temple guardians recognized Nari as the rightful heir, the white-furred warrior declared. Do the royal guards stand with us? Theron nodded. We do. By the ancient laws, Princess Nari is now. No. Nari's voice was firm. No more rule by divine right or ancient tradition alone. We need a new way. She addressed the broadcast, speaking to all who watched. I propose a council, drawn from all parts of our society, including our human allies. Let us build a future based on cooperation, not conquest. Lee watched the crowds below erupt in cheers, human and Krasari voices joining together. His tactical display showed similar scenes playing out across the capital. It won't be easy, he said softly. Change never is. Nari turned to him, her eyes bright with emotion. The best things never are. Her hand found his. Stay with me, help me build this new future. Try and stop me, he pulled her close, not caring who watched. I love you, you brilliant, crazy, revolutionary princess. Her kiss was answer enough, passionate and fierce and full of promise. When they parted, her tail was curled possessively around his waist. Technically, she said with a smile, I think I just abolished the monarchy, so maybe just Nari now? You'll always be a princess to me. He touched her cheek gently, the one who dared to dream of something better. Lady Kira cleared her throat, though her eyes sparkled with approval. Perhaps we should finish the revolutionary speeches before the public displays of affection. Nari laughed, a sound of pure joy that seemed to sweep away the last shadows of her imprisonment. She turned back to the broadcast, her hand still firmly in Lee's. My people, all my people, Krasari and human alike, today we begin something new, something that has never been tried in all our history. Her voice rang with hope and determination. Today, we choose to be free, to forge bonds stronger than any chains, to build a future worthy of both our peoples. Below, the crowds roared their approval. Lee's tactical display showed the news spreading across human space as well. The prevented war, the new alliance, the promise of cooperation instead of conflict. But he wasn't watching the displays anymore. He was watching Nari, brave, brilliant, beautiful Nari, as she began the work of transforming her world. And he knew, with absolute certainty, that he would spend the rest of his life helping her build that brighter future. One that they would forge together, freely chosen, stronger than any chains of birthright could ever be.